Let's start off by seeing how it all looks, then I'll show you how to make it. Just like in Skyrim, we need lockpicks, so let me head over to this guy and get a couple free ones. When you try to open a door that's locked, it'll tell you the difficulty of the lock and how many lockpicks you currently have on you. After clicking the pick lock option, the minigame will appear, and just like in Skyrim, you'll be able to move the lockpick back and forth to where you think the open position is at. At any point, you can click the back button and leave the minigame if you wish. Now, this is where it'll be a little bit different than Skyrim, but still work in a very similar way. Instead of you being able to turn the keyhole slowly to see how close you are, you'll click the confirm button to play a little animation, letting you know if you're close or not. The screen will shake and the keyhole won't move if you're too far away. If you get closer to the win position, it will turn a little bit. If you're really close, it'll turn a lot more. And if you're in the right spot, it will open. The lockpick also has an invisible health bar, so if you mess up too many times, the lockpick will break, and a new one will come into play if you have any left in your inventory. I think that sums up pretty much everything, so let's see how to make it. Before we start, as you can probably tell, I am using images that I created myself from Paint. If you'd like to use these exact images, you can download them for free from my Patreon in the link down below in the description. While donations are appreciated, you do not need to spend any money to download these. Also, at the end of the video, I will scroll through all of the code slowly, just in case you want to copy it or double check your work. But before that, I will explain everything so you'll be able to understand what everything does and change it to your liking. Now, the very first thing that you want to do is head to your items, add one to your maximum, and call it lockpick. You can have the settings be whatever you like. Next, we'll add all of the switches and all of the variables we'll need. So let's do a control switches and add one called lockpick game. This switch will be used to disable our character from walking around and make it so when we use the arrow keys, it'll move the lockpick instead. The rest of the switches will be for all of the doors, chests, and everything else that can be unlocked in your game. I only have 3 doors, so I only have 3 unlocks. It's easy to add the switches in later, so don't worry about needing to know how many total lock things you have right now. Make sure to click OK to save the switches that you just made, then click cancel so we don't actually add them into our game. For the control variables, we're going to add 13 of them. Lockpick tilt will let the game know how far the lockpick is tilted to the left or to the right. What to unlock will tell the game which door, chest, or other item to unlock when you win the minigame. Lockpick tilt win number is the random position on the keyhole to win the minigame. Lockpick difficulty 1 through 3 tells the minigame which difficulty to do when it pops up on your screen. The lockpick with the 3, 2, and 1 pluses and the 1, 2, and 3 minuses determine how close you are to the win position and how far the keyhole will turn. Make sure all of these variables are right next to each other in the list. Lockpick health keeps track of when the lockpick will break. Lockpicks in inventory, well, it keeps track of how many lockpicks are in your inventory. And finally, lockpick amount of pluses is a special variable telling the game how far to move the keyhole back after it moves a little bit and the lockpick breaks all at the same time. Make sure to click OK to save the variables you just made, then cancel so you don't add it into your common event. Now let's move to the common events. We'll have a total of 4. The first one is Lockpick Minigame. This controls all of your button pushes while the minigame is on the screen. Then we'll have Lockpick Game Start, which makes the minigame pop up and sets the random win position. Then we'll also add Lockpick Unlock, which identifies what you're trying to unlock and unlocks it when you win the game. Finally, we got lockpick open attempt, which plays an animation depending on how close you are to the win position, and it also keeps track of how much health your lockpick has. Before we make these common events, let's head to the door itself to see what we have to add there. At the very top, you're going to want to add a control variable, what door to unlock, and set it to 1. Below that, we'll add a lockpick difficulty set to the difficulty you want your lock, with 1 being easy, 2 being medium, and 3 being hard. I'll set this one to easy. Below that, we'll add a control variables, the lockpicks in inventory. Also, make sure you remember what this number is. We will set it to game data lockpicks in inventory. Then directly below that, we'll add a conditional branch that has an else. It'll be set to the variable lockpicks in inventory equal to 0. So if we have 0 lockpicks, we'll just display a text saying this door is locked, but you have no lockpicks, and then an exit event processing. If we do have more than 0 lockpicks, below the else, we'll put a text saying this door has a simple lock because we chose that up here. Then we'll do you have /v12 lockpicks, which is referring to this variable 12 of how many lockpicks we have in our inventory, just so our character knows. Below that, we can add a show choices, pick lock and leave. Under the pick lock, you can add a call common event, lockpick game start. Under leave, you don't need to put anything because it'll just go to the end of this branch and go to the end of this branch and nothing will happen. On the second page, you can keep this the same as a default door or whatever you'd like. Just make sure this switch is set to the unlock number equal to the number of the unlock you did on the first page. So this one I set to 1, so I have unlock 1 on over here. The other doors are very similar. We'll set this door to unlock 2, making sure that on the second page it's unlock 2. Then we'll set the difficulty, which I'll set to 2. The lockpicks in inventory stays the same, everything else is the same, other than down here in the text, you'll want to change what type of lock it is equal to the difficulty you made it here. Again, same thing for the highest difficulty one. Change the difficulty to the highest, and change the text to be the advanced lock or whatever you call it in your game. Then, once you have all 3 of these doors made, you could simply copy and paste them wherever you want, depending on which difficulty door you want. And the only thing you'll have to change after you paste it is this what to unlock, and change it to whatever number you set here over here. Now we can head back and make all of the common events. Let's start on the first one, lockpick minigame. What you'll want to do is have the trigger set to auto run. This makes it so our character can't move around while we're doing the minigame, and we'll set our condition switch to just be lockpick game. We're going to make a total of 4 conditional branches for each button that we can push. But we'll start off by making a conditional branch with the B button being pushed. Do not check this. We'll add a text saying exit lockpicking, then with the choices yes or no. Under the yes, add these 4 erase pictures. We're going to erase picture 50, 51, 52, and 53. Then we're going to do a control switches, lockpick game off. Under no, we can leave it blank, so it just won't do anything. And then below that branch, add a wait 20 frames, because if you don't, and you click no with the back button, there won't be any frames in between you clicking no and the message disappearing, so it'll immediately bring this text back up. So we'll add a little 20 frame buffer, so it doesn't play this in repeat infinitely. Then, moving on to the next conditional branch, we will set this up as the C button or OK button. Don't have this selected. Inside, we're going to add a control switches lockpick game off. then a call common event, lockpick open attempt. And again with this one, we'll add a wait 20, because if we click the OK button, there is no frames in between us clicking it and letting go, so it'll just run this like 3 to 10 times before it stops. After that, we'll add another conditional branch with the right button being pressed and don't have this selected. We're going to immediately add in a loop. Inside that loop, we're going to add a conditional branch, but I will come back to this. Below the conditional branch, we'll want to add a rotate picture 53, which will be our lockpick moving back and forth. And we'll have it set to -2, which means it will move clockwise that fast. Below that, we're going to add a control variable, lockpick tilt subtract 1, and then a wait 1 frame. So that way we know every frame it'll move a little bit, which will be equal to 1 angle. Below that wait, we'll add a conditional branch. With the button right is being pressed, this time make sure you have this checked. So if we are continuing to hold in the right button, it'll keep looping. But under the else, if we let go of the right button, we'll do a rotate picture 53 0. So the lockpick stops moving. And then a break loop, so the whole thing stops rotating altogether. Going back up to the top of the loop, we're going to have this conditional branch, which is lockpick tilt less than or equal to -90. Inside of that, we're going to have a rotate picture 53, which is the lockpick 0. So if we are at the maximum tilt, if we're as far right as possible, it will stop it from moving, and we will break the loop so it doesn't move at all and go down here to make it rotate. The other conditional branch is the exact same as the right, but we'll just have to change everything that says right to left and everything that says +2 to -2. Then we will do this conditional branch and change it to greater than or equal to 90. And we'll change this control variable and change it to add 1. Everything else can be exactly the same, but just make sure you change the -2s to +2s, the rights to lefts, and then those two things. Now we can move over to the lockpick game start. We can keep the trigger as none, and at the very start add a control variables lockpick tilt win number, set it to a random number between -90, which would be all the way right, and regular 90, which would be all the way left. Then we'll wait 1 frame just to make sure that this triggers before this. Then we'll add a control variables. We'll click on single and make sure we know where our lockpick +++ and --- is, and everything in between that we are going to change to the same thing. So we'll just have to remember what the first and last number is. So for me, it is 5 and 10. So I'm going to click batch, 5 through 10. I'm going to set all of those variables to the variable of the lockpick tilt win number. Then below that, we're going to add a conditional branch for each difficulty. So for the first one, we're going to do a conditional branch. Lockpick difficulty 1 through 3 is equal to 1. So if we're using an easy lock, inside of it, we're going to add a control variables, lockpick 3 pluses, add 35, then a ++, add 18, then a plus, add 6, then a control variable 3- sub 35, then a lockpick 2- sub 18, then a lockpick - sub 6. So what does this all mean? Well, we will set all of these numbers to the win position, and then we add or subtract that number from the win position. So let's just say the random number that it chose was 20. Then that means 20 plus 6 would be 26. and 20 minus 6 would be 14. So any angle between 26 and 14 will be the winning angle. You can also add these two numbers at the end to figure out what degree angle is your win degree angle. So for me, on easy, I have a 6 and a 6 for the 1 plus and 1 minus, meaning I have a 12 degree angle of winning. Then this second highest number will determine when the lockpick moves a lot, so 18 and 18 is 36, so I have a 36 degree angle of it rotating a lot. And then finally, for this last number is 35 and 35, so I have a 70 degree angle for it to just rotate a tiny bit. Then we can copy and paste this whole conditional branch with everything inside of it 3 times, changing the second one to equal to 2, and the third one equal to 3. For my medium difficulty, I changed the win numbers to 4 and 4, so an 8 degree angle, my medium one to 10 and 10, and my large one to 25 and 25. Then on my hard difficulty one, I changed my win position to 2 and 2, so only a 4 degree angle to win, the medium to 8 and 8, and the large one to 16 and 16. After these 3 conditional branches, we're gonna wanna have our lockpick minigame spawn in. So we're going to add a show picture. We're going to pick the background. We're going to make sure the opacity is at 255 so it's fully visible. For this one that I made, I kept it at 100 and 100. And make sure the origin is set to center, so when it rotates, it'll rotate from the center and not look weird. Now, to figure out what these numbers are, you have to figure out what your tile size is for your game. So for my game, I'm using RPG Maker VX Ace, and my tile size is 32 by 32. So what you have to do is times that by 8.5 for this number and 6 for this number. What that'll do is figure out where the exact center of your screen is. So another example is the newest RPG Maker, MZ, uses by default 48 by 48. So we times that by 8.5 to get 408 up here, and we'd multiply 48 times 6 to get 288 down here. Just make sure you know what your tile size is on your game so you can figure out what numbers to put in here to find the center of your screen. Now let's add in the other pictures. So we'll make another one directly below it, that is 51, and we'll choose the keyhole. Now I made this one a bit small, so we'll have to boost the height and width up to 200%. For all of them, make sure it's center. Keep the opacity at 255 so it's fully visible, and use those numbers that you figured out earlier for here. On to the next one. We will have it be 52, and I have it being line, which is the little shiv that moves the keyhole back and forth. Again, make sure it's center. This one we can keep at 100 and 100, 255, and use those numbers that you found out. For this last one, we will have it be 53, which will be the lockpick itself, which is line 1 that I have. Again, center, have the numbers be what you figured out, 255, but you'll want to change the width to 60 and the height to 150. Again, all of these zooms are for the pictures that I created, but if you decide to make your own in Paint, then use whatever ones make it look correct on screen. After all of these show pictures, we're going to want to add a control variable, lockpick health, set 10, so we'll reset the lockpick back to 10 health every time we start the game. After that, we're going to want to add another control variables, lockpick tilt, set 0, so we'll reset the position. And then we'll add a control switches, lockpick game on. Make sure you add a 30 frames at the end, because when you don't add a 30 frames, then as soon as you click pick lock at a door, it will immediately try to do the first position that it starts at. But if you add this 30 frames, it'll add a little buffer where you can click pick lock, and then it'll wait 30 frames, and then you could start playing the game. So just make sure you add that. Now we can move on to our third common event, Lockpick Unlock. For this common event, we'll add 4 erase pictures of the 4 pictures that we've added. So erase picture 50, 51, 52, 53. Then we'll add a conditional branch for every door, chest, and everything else that you have that can be unlocked in your game. Of course, you can add these later, so no need to worry about adding them all right now. But for me and my 3 doors, I have a conditional branch. What to unlock equal to 1, and then set the control switch inside equal to the conditional branch. So unlock 1 is set to 1. This conditional branch for what to unlock is equal to 2, so control switch is unlock 2, and so on and so on. Now on to the final common event, Lockpick Open Attempt. Starting at the top, we're going to want to add a conditional branch, variable lockpick tilt less than or equal to lockpick plus, and then conditional branch lockpick tilt greater than or equal to lockpick minus. These 2 conditional branches together will find the win position, so we will add a rotate picture 52 -3, which will rotate the keyhole clockwise, and a 51, which will also rotate the little shiv clockwise. Then we'll add a wait 60, which is just enough time for it to rotate 90 degrees and look like it clicks into position. Then a rotate picture 52 and 51 down to 0, so it stops rotating. Then a sound effect for the unlock sound. We'll add a wait 15, just so there's a tiny pause before it actually unlocks. And then a call common event, lockpick unlock. After that, we'll add a jump to label end, but we'll make that label later. After these conditional branches, we're going to add another one called variable lockpick tilt less than or equal to lockpick plus plus, and directly inside of it, lockpick tilt greater than or equal to lockpick minus minus. Inside that, we're going to want to add a control variable, lockpick amount of pluses set to 2. So if our lockpick breaks when we only open it a little bit, we'll know how much to rotate it back. Then we'll add a rotate picture 52 and 51 at -3, so clockwise. Then we'll add a wait 30 frames, so it only rotates a little bit, and then put in a sound effect that sounds like you didn't quite unlock the door. After that, we'll do a rotate picture 52 and 51 back to 0, so it stops rotating. Then we'll damage the lockpick. So add a tint picture 53 and make it a little bit red. Set it to 2 frames and wait for completion. Then we can add a screen shake for a little bit of shakiness. I have mine set to 20 frames. And below that, we can tint the picture back to its original color of the 53 lockpick. I have mine set to 8 frames and wait for completion. Below that, we will do a control variable to damage the lockpick. We'll do lockpick health, subtract 1. Then we'll check if the lockpick has 0 or less health by doing a conditional branch. Lockpick health less than or equal to 0. Inside of that, we'll add a jump to label break, and we'll make that break label later. Then, if the lockpick didn't break, we can rotate it back into position. So we'll add a rotate picture 52 and 51 with a +3, so counterclockwise back into position. A wait 30, because that's how long we waited up here. And then a rotate picture 52 and 51, 0, so it'll stop rotating. Then we can add a control switches, lockpick game on, so we can move the lockpick back and forth again, and a jump to label end. After that, we will add in another conditional branch, variable lockpick tilt, less than or equal to lockpick plus plus plus. Then we're going to want to add a conditional branch variable lockpick tilt greater than or equal to lockpick minus minus minus. Inside that, we'll add a control variable lockpick amount of pluses set to 3 for if our lockpick breaks. Then we'll add a rotate picture 52 and 51 clockwise, so -3. We'll wait 10 frames so it only moves a tiny bit. Then we'll play a sound effect that sounds like we didn't really unlock it. Then a rotate picture 52 and 51 to 0, so it'll stop rotating the picture. Then a tint picture 53 to make the lockpick pop up red a tiny bit for 2 frames, wait for completion. Then we can make this screen shake a medium amount for 20 frames. And tint the picture 53 back to its original. I did 8 frames and wait. After that, we can damage the lockpick a little bit more. So we'll do lockpick health, subtract 2 for the control variable. Then we'll check if the lockpick has 0 or less health with the conditional branch lockpick health less than or equal to 0. And inside of it, we'll add a jump to label break. Now we have to rotate it back, so we'll do a rotate picture 52 and 51 plus 3, wait 10 frames because we did that much up here, and then a rotate picture 52 and 51 at 0 to stop them from rotating, and then a control switches lockpick game on so we can keep on playing. Then add a jump to label end. Now we'll add everything for if the keyhole doesn't turn at all. So below that branch, we'll add a control variables, lockpick amount of pluses, we'll set it to 0. Then we'll add a sound effect for it not opening. We'll tint the picture 53, the lockpick max red, 2 frames wait. Then we'll shake the screen at full intensity for 20. Then we can tint the picture back to its original, 8 frames wait. Then a control variable, lockpick health, subtract 3. Then we'll check if the lockpick broke, so we'll do conditional branch, lockpick health less than or equal to 0. Inside of it, we'll do a jump to label break. And then below that, we'll do a control switches lockpick game on, meaning it didn't break. And then a jump to label end. Now, underneath this jump to label end, we'll be able to add our label break. Below that, we'll do a change items, lockpick decrease 1. We'll do a sound effect that sounds like the lockpick has broke. We will take a move picture, 53 the lockpick, and just set it to 0 over here so it just turns invisible. I have it set to 1 frame, so it looks like it broke and disappeared. Then we'll do a control variables, lockpicks in inventory. We will set our game data lockpicks to our lockpicks in inventory. Then we'll wait 30 frames and then check if we have any more lockpicks. So we'll do a conditional branch, lockpicks in inventory if it's less than or equal to 0. Also make sure this is checked. So if we don't have any, we'll put a text out of lockpicks and erase the 4 pictures so the mini game goes away. Under the else, if we do have enough lockpicks in our inventory, we'll add a conditional branch. If the lockpick amount of pluses is equal to 2, we will rotate the 2 pictures plus 3 to rotate it back into position. Wait 30 frames, because 30 frames is the same amount we did with the plus plus, and then rotate 52 and 51 0 to stop it from rotating. Then below that, we'll add another conditional branch, lockpick amount of pluses equal to 3. We'll rotate those 2 pictures plus 3, and then wait 10 frames because we did that for our pluses, we had wait 10 frames. Below that, we'll do rotate picture 52 and 51 to 0 to stop it from rotating. And then we can respawn our lockpick. So below that branch, we'll add a move picture 53, bringing this back up to 255, and we'll do 30 frames, wait for completion. Then we'll reset the lockpick health. So control variable lockpick health set 10, and we'll do a control switches lockpick game on so we can keep on playing. At the very end, make sure you add a label end. And now you're completely done. You're all set up and everything should work for you. Just as a reminder, I do go through all the code at the end of the video, but thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.